What if your worst mistake became the foundation for your greatest success? Today, we are diving into an extraordinary journey of a man who went from a federal prison cell to becoming a VP, a keynote speaker, and a authority on ethics. With no further ado, on the stage, it's about to go down. It's your boy Carlos Inspire and Chuck Gallagher in the house.
Hey, Carlos, man, how you doing?
What's up, Chuck? My brother, man. I'm so looking forward to do this, Chuck. I don't know if I ever told you, back in the day when I was an immigrant and I first came to America, I used to recruit gangsters and ex-cons out of prison, and I would show them how to go door to door selling cable TV and internet. Who here remembers in the early 2000s when MySpace was around, we were showing people that the modem was a new thing for high-speed data. No longer using AOL, the dial-up, the CD, So we were introducing the whole technology, around US, and we will go to the dangerous areas, Chuck. We'll go to the barrios, we'll go to Brooklyn, we'll go to Jamaica playing in Boston, we'll go Chi-Town, we'll go Connecticut, we'll go every place, we'll go Watts in LA, anywhere that was super ultra danger, that they would not hire a white man on a payroll. They would send me and my homies on as contractors, because if we die or got stabbed, they didn't have to pay insurance.
So that's funny.
I am super, super excited for this, as you can already tell. And my followers were super excited already. Shout out to everybody commenting on LinkedIn, on X, on Facebook, man. Without you guys, we couldn't do the show. And let's get ready. And Chuck, let's address the elephant in the room. How does someone goes from being a VP of a public company to a convicted felon? What happened there? But walk us through it. Your story is fascinating. Let's unpack it and share it.
All right. Okay. First, Carlos, most of the time, there are a few exceptions, but most of the time, nobody says, oh, I'm going to do something stupid, right? It all starts small. So for me, it goes back to the mid 80s, latter part of the 80s. And here's the way I put it. I was tax partner in a CPA firm. I've got a master's in accounting. I'm smart. I know things, right? I'm successful. I had testified before Congress. I'd written articles in national magazines. I taught other CPAs in 30 states, but I couldn't manage my own financial affairs. Okay. I was like overextended and underfunded, or the best way to put it is I had too damn much debt. So I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'll pay this bill, not pay that bill, then pay this bill. I'm moving things around. It's a chess game. And one day I get a call from my local banker. Now, this guy liked me, okay? We went to church together. He sent me lots of business, but he calls me and he says, hey, Chuck, he said, looks like you're 2 months behind in your house payment. Is there a problem? All right, so let me just call it what it is. When he said that, I had this holy crap moment of, now, if I tell him the truth that I can't manage my own financial affairs, but I'm supposed to manage people's financial affairs because I'm a CPA and he sends me lots of business and he thinks I can't manage mine, he won't send me the business. And if he doesn't send me the business, I won't have money. And if I don't have money, I can't pay the bills that I currently couldn't already pay. Am I going to tell him the truth? Hell no.
Damn.
So I say to the guy, I said, are you sure there wasn't a misapplication? I mean, didn't you put it in the wrong place? And it was just a distraction. He said, well, I don't think so, but I'll call you back. And at that moment, I'm sitting there thinking, crap, I've got to figure out how to come up with $2,000 like real quick. Now, could have gone to my partners and asked for the money, but the people that signed the checks weren't in. They were gone. And it was like, okay, well, I can't get it from them. Could have called my mom. Mom would have loaned me the money. But it was 1987, Carlos. We didn't have Venmo and Zelle, and we can just transfer money like that. It didn't exist. That ain't going to work. So I did the only thing I could do in a couple of hours, and I thought, I'm a trustee in a client's trust. I'll just take the money from them. they'll never know. So I stole the money. Now, all right, let's call it what it really is. Of course, I said I was borrowing the money because nobody says, I'm going to go steal money. You don't sleep well at night if you do that. But I said, I'm going to borrow the money. So I stole the money, but I called it borrowing. I paid him the amount that was due, blamed it on my wife because we just had a baby. Ladies in the call, sorry. Adam and Eve, got to blame somebody. The apple, Eve, you get the idea. So blamed it on my wife. He was like, oh man, it's okay. He said, I passed a bad check once. We had a male bonding moment. Like we both had screwed up, but it's all right. So here's the deal. Paid him back. And when I got my bonus, I paid that off. But then I did it again. And
I stole it again?
And then I paid it back.
Oh, you borrowed again.
I borrowed again. Borrowed again, paid it back. Now, here's the deal. If you do something enough and you don't get caught, you're apt to do it regularly. And I did, and I created a Ponzi scheme. And a Ponzi scheme will always collapse. It always will collapse. So I got by with it for about 3 years. Bernie Madoff got by with it for about 27. But I got by with it for 3 years before it collapsed. So that's how somebody that's fairly smart ends up doing stupid crap that will send you to federal prison.
Wow. And I have a question for you. In that prison cell, did you ever imagine that one day you'll be standing on stages? You know me, I'm a huge proponent of teaching stages, helping a gazillion number of influencers to get on stages. As you and I know, you can build authority, credibility faster. Yep. But did you ever imagine being from that prison cell to speaking on stages, teaching ethics to companies worldwide, people knocking at your door, and you're an incredible leader that's dominating that space? Did you ever imagine that, sitting on that cell? If you can go back.
Because here's the thing. I had been a speaker teaching education for CPAs. So the idea of speaking was not foreign to me. But sitting in a prison cell, there's a point where you're just kind of low. It's like, I could never have imagined, nobody would have ever said, person most likely to go to prison. Nobody would have pointed at me, right? That would not have naturally happened. So sitting there, there's a point when you're in that process, you think, I don't know if anything good's ever going to happen. But here's the truth. You can choose, a human being can choose to be a victim or a victor. Yeah. It is totally a choice. And I know today people that were incarcerated with me who got out and it was woe is me and the world's not treating me fair and I'm just not getting whatever. And they've ended up back in prison. And I know others who got out and said, I made a mistake, but I am not a mistake. Amen. And just fair statement. I'll probably say it more than once. Your history does not create your destiny.
Amen, my brother. Amen, man. We were just talking about this earlier, about you not being a product of your environment. I remember, as a kid, selling bread. Sometimes I would go to certain parts of town where the wealthy would live to sell my bread. And they're like, oh, you don't belong here. What are you doing here? Don't solicit here. I'm like, I'm selling bread. I'm 7 years old. It's to help my mom. It's to leave the hood and to leave the battle. But I always, in my head, I didn't say that out loud, right? I'm saying in my head, like, you don't know how hungry I am. Watch me. One day, and it's funny now that some of these people that were racist towards me or judged me when I was a kid and growing up in Brazil, and now they see me here in California, with people like Wesley Snipes or soccer players and ball players and football players and many other celebrities that I happen to have the honor to collaborate, do things together. And now they're like, oh, wow, that little kid selling bread on the streets, making 50 cents a day. The world goes around. That's why I never judge a book on its cover. It's such a powerful concept. And tell me something, Chuck, when it was like that turning point for you in prison, because I bet you right now, a lot of people are listening to us here. They're still kind of recovering from COVID, and some people even recovering from the recession back in 2008. And some of us a little bit older, still recovering from back in 2001. right? So three big historical things happening in the US this last 25 years that
Yeah.
put a lot of people on their knees, right? 01, 08, and COVID. And they still recover. As you and I know, being in finance and talking about numbers, we know how hard it is to recover from a 50% loss. But what was the turning point for yourself, the moment that you decided this isn't the end for me?
Carlos, let me answer that two ways. Okay. First, when I went into federal prison, never have been there before. Okay. So it was like first experience. But when I went into federal prison, by the way, I'm going to say this, and I want to make sure that everybody listening knows I am not making fun of anybody. Okay. Because you'll have to understand the context, but I'm not making fun of anybody.
I know,
but
especially nowadays, people get offended so easy.
Like, oh yeah.
Let's have a grow up conversation.
Listen, if you're easily offended, suck it up, Buttercup, because we're going to go. Okay. But when I go into federal prison, and you go through the initial thing, and you get your clothes and whatever, and you're walking through the yard, and everybody's like looking at you like fresh meat, and I'm like, holy crap. But by the way, I watched the Shawshank Redemption 2 weeks before I went in, which is probably stupid to do because it'll screw up your head. Okay.
It really will mess up with you psychologically.
I was like, why did I do that?
Did you bring the hammer?
Oh my God. Just the whole thing. It was like, holy crap. So I get into federal prison, and there is a point behind this little short story, but I get to my cell, and my cellmate is an African-American guy. His name is Buck. My name is Chuck. Oh. I'm not sure if they put Buck and Chuck together so the guards could laugh or what, but here it is. It's Ebony and Ivory, Buck and Chuck. Well, he doesn't say anything to me, like not a word. Okay. Now, Carlos, you've been in sales. I've been in sales. So he who speaks first loses. So I'm like, okay, you're not going to talk. I ain't going to talk. Whoop, went to www.zipit.com. Didn't open my mouth.
For how long, Chuck?
So we go 24 hours, not a word. And finally he looks at me. Now, this is the part, don't anybody get offended, but you have to understand how it played, right? He looks at me and he says, yo, man, what you in here for? I'm like, he spoke. Whoa. And it's like, what do I say? So I put on my John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, bad to the bone white old man, and said, well, I'm a liar and a thief. He looks at me and he says, word? And I'm like, word? Yo, man, I said, word. Word? And then he says, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And he flies out of the cell like the freaking Tasmanian devil. And I'm just standing there like, what the hell just happened? I don't understand. It's my first communication and I am freaking lost. Oh, and then he comes flying back in the cell and he looks at me and he says, yo, man, you ain't going to make it in here. Now I'm like, oh, well, that's really encouraging. He says, y'all don't know the lingo, man. He says, you don't know the rules. You don't know what you needs to be doing. He said, I tell you what, I makes you a deal. And I'm like, make me a deal. I've been here 24 hours. But I did not go to Barnes & Noble and buy Prison for Dummies, so probably should have. Just know what better than pay or not.
Shawshank Redemption, right?
Shawshank Redemption should have been Prison for Dummies. Anyway, he says, but I tell you what I'll do. He says, I'll teach you the lingo. He said, I'll teach you everything you need to know. He said, I will make sure while you're in here that you will be safe and ain't going to be no problem. And he said, in fact, I'm going to teach you so good when you get out, you can go to the hood anywhere and ain't nobody going to ever mess with you.
Word, baby.
If you will teach me how to speak correctly, so when I get out, I can get a real job. And Carlos, Buck was an angel. It was like, within 24 hours, here is this young guy, 15 years younger than me, who says, I'm going to take you under my wing and I will teach you what you need to know so you can survive this experience. But you need to teach me, how do I survive the experience getting out?
And Chuck, timeline-wise, this was back in the late 80s, early 90s?
This is 1995. When I was eventually sentenced and submitted to prison. Now, Let me give you a little quick side note to that. Okay. So Buck was in for a drug charge. So 5-year minimum mandatory for drugs. And in those days, when you were arrested, if there was a gun anywhere, and he was in his grandfather's house, and above the fireplace was an old shotgun. It didn't even have a firing pin in it. But because there was a gun somewhere, that added another 5 years. So he was in for 10 years. He'd already served 5. So here we are, we get together, and the Supreme Court made a change in the gun rules, and he appealed it and got out 3 years early. Yay for him. But I ended up moving and I lost contact with it. Okay. And I have tried for almost 30 years to find him. And in January, I found Buck.
January of which year?
This year, 2025.
No
so
way.
29 years later, I find my old cellmate. And there's 2 parts to this that's really important. One is we meet, give each other hugs, catch up on 29 years of difference. But when he got out, he never went back. So it's a testament to the fact that no matter what you're in for or what the circumstance, you can overcome it. So he never went back. Neither did I. But I told him, I said, Buck, you were an angel to me. You just took me under your wings, and it made the experience. It didn't make it fun, but it made it safe. It made it so I believed, yes, I'm going to get out, and there is something on the other side. Carlos, in January, he looks at me and he said, Chuck, he said, I was in for 5 years and thought I was going to serve 10. And he said, but you're the only cellmate that I remember. And he said, when you came in, you had such optimism. You gave me hope that maybe there was a chance I could get out sooner. And if it weren't for you, I would never have filed the paperwork to take advantage of the possibility of getting out. He said, so you gave me 3 years of my life back, and it had not been for you, it never would have happened. Because we don't know when we're talking with people what impact we're going to have on their lives.
Wow. And what's so cool about that, Chuck, is the question that he asked, right? If you could help him with communication, which you and I, masters of speaking and public speaking and sales and branding, it's the number one things anybody can learn. And again, it's like asking questions, reaching out to people like Chuck, like myself, asking the question, asking for help. What can I do to help you? What can I do to add value to you? That's how I was able to connect with so many incredible people like you, like Tony Robbins and Liz Brown and Jay Shetty and blah, blah, blah. Hey, what do you need help with? What can I do? Hey, let me refer you a few clients to your mastermind, your retreat. Let's do a podcast. Let's do an interview. Let's do whatever. Let me move the chairs around your event. Let me check in the badges, right? What are you willing to do? Are you asking the question? You guys listening to us now, look at this incredible story. I'm so happy that we have this talk, because look what happened to Buck and how his life changed just by meeting Chuck, in saving Chuck's life in prison. You know how it is when you're a white boy in prison. If you don't know the game, it's over. It's the likelihood of you being tortured, raped, and all kinds of beaten, abused, and all kind of bully. It's like 99%.
Yeah.
So Buck was like his angel, but then Chuck was Buck's angel because he gave him the most powerful gift that you can give another human being: communication. How to talk, how to communicate. And that's the reason why he didn't went back, brother. So I salute you. Have you interviewed him on your show yet? I know you do live YouTube, and I had to ask. Shout out to YouTube doing videos. Check him out, Gallagher.
So the answer to that question is not yet, because here's what I'm thinking. Okay, now, Carlos, you're the guy that thinks way outside of the box, right? So I'm thinking, holy crap, I found my cellmate. Buck and Chuck, Ebony and Ivory, neither one of us went back. We both have stories, but we both succeeded. So what I want to do is I want to do a mini interview of Buck, and let's talk about those 29 years. And the same with me. And let's talk about the 29 years. And then let's say, now, what can we do to help other people? And I'm going to tell you what I want to do. I want either Oprah or Tyler Perry to pick that sucker up, and let's do a documentary so that people can understand your history does not create your destiny.
I was
You can
literally gonna say
succeed.
that, man. This shit belongs on Netflix, brother. I'm
Yes.
telling you, and Netflix, even Amazon Prime. One of my clients and very best friends, I don't know if you know him, Sean Kennan. He was the main actor at Karate Kid 3.
Oh, cool.
On the movie. He's the white boy that bullied Daniel's son.
Yep.
So they are super successful on Prime and making really good money. They won a bunch of awards, him and his wife. Shout out Michelle and Sean to guys that are listening. I know that they've both been on the show. Great friends of mine. We've seen each other's kids growing up. We always doing things together. So great couple out of Hollywood. You know me. I don't hang too many people. You'll never catch me on a Didi party, but I'm not even going to go there, But your story, brother, it belongs on Netflix. I can't imagine. And if I can add value to how we roll, I'll be shedding. I charge people $1,000 to do a shout out. It'll be multiple free shout outs to you, to my Instagram. Check it out, guys. My Instagram at Carlos Inspire. I have almost 40,000 followers there. My TikTok at Carlos Inspire. I'm always, sharing whenever I have good stories like this. We should go on TikTok when that Netflix come up. I bet you we get a bunch of those youngsters coming in. And now we actually even have a senior population there now going to TikTok because of everything that's happening. You know how it is, Chuck. When you take something away, they hear everything. Now they want even more.
Want to come back, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my brother. Wow. I mean, now I'm looking forward to hearing seeing that documentary. It's going to help so many people. And Chuck, you often talk about the human side of ethics. Why do you think so many people, even in leadership roles, they struggle with making ethical decisions?
Carlos, let me play with a little example for a second, okay? Yesterday I was standing in front of a group of people doing a presentation like we do, and I asked them a question. I said, how many of you would voluntarily choose to do something unethical? Nobody. Okay? Nobody.
Better interrupt.
Y'all lying, but that's okay. Nobody. Next question, I said, do you think that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? By show of hands. And most everybody's hand went up. All right. Next question. How many of you have driven on the interstate highways in the past 2 weeks? Everybody's hand goes up. And then you can look at them, and some of them look they're psychic because they know the next question. And how many of you exceed the speed limit by 5 to 10? And everybody's hand goes up, right? And it's like, okay, now I want you to think about it, because you said you wouldn't do something unethical, and you said that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical, but yet you speed every day. So go back to your question. Why do we talk about the human side of ethics, and why is it so easy for people to make unethical choices? If the choice you make seems to be socially acceptable and there's no consequence or immediate consequence, what happens? Just keep doing it over and over. So, and I don't care what it happens to be. Yesterday, I'm in this conference and a guy comes up to me. His name was Charles. So, we kind of had a little connection there. And I said to him, he said to me, I broke the law about 40 years ago. And I'm like, wow, you remember that? And he said, no, I work for a company. And he said, we got paid a mileage, for driving the car around to do whatever it was we did. And he said, so I filled out my expense report the first month, and it was like $275. And before I turned it in, he said, two of the other people came up to me and he says, no, stop. Don't turn that in. He said, why? He said, because they're not paying us enough money. So we normally fill it out so it's almost $1,000 a month. He said, that's what I'm supposed to do? He said, yeah, everybody does it. So he filled it out and made it 700. And then it got to 800, and then it got to 1,000. But Carlos, had he done the right thing, it would have been 200 and some dollars, and everybody he worked with would have been pissed because he would have told the truth and it would have outed them. But everybody had their shtick with this company. They were getting theirs, so to speak. And as long as you don't get caught, it then seems to be okay. So one of the big challenges, and good God, it's true in Washington and in government, is figuring out just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And the bigger thing is eventually the truth will always come out. Yeah. It's always going to come out.
Wow. No, man, that's so true. It's so true. It's like, I was raised in such a strict environment. My grandfather, because you guys know my story, my father died when I was a baby. Stepfather was murdered. So I was raised by my mom, my grandma, and my grandpa. And man, if I would do anything crazy, it could be skip church and lie. Oh God, skip churching was it, brother. Back in the late 80s and the 90s, I would have to be on my knees on the backyard, on the dirt. It's 110 degrees, and my grandma and grandpa would add a little corn to it. You know the corn that you feed the chicks? Oh yeah. And my big old butter. You guys know me. I'm 6'5", 300 pounds, so I always been big. Even when I was 7, 8, 9, and I'm over there on my knees, pissed off. But guess what? Did I did it again? Hell no. Whenever something unethical will post, like, nope, I didn't want to be on that knee because my grandpa always remind me, in prison is worse. Yeah. Maybe I wasn't going to be fortunate enough to meet a buck. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And and you know what I mean? So it's such a great topic. And also having a standard, something that I always talk about at home, my daughter, my family, my friends, my clients, you got to have a standard. You got to know how to say no. You don't want to be like, for example, I always tell my clients, you don't want to be on every podcast, every stage, every radio show. You want to be a shows and podcasts of people that are in alignment. Like you and I, we serve a very similar niche. We got a bunch of CEOs of Fortune 50, 500, 5,000 companies that listen to this show. We have event organizers that listen to this show. What are they going to do? They're going to see Chuck. Hey, Chuck might get a few gigs from that. But again, Chuck trading all expectations for appreciation. He's here to serve. And I appreciate you for bringing full out. It's such a powerful conversation that we needed to have more than ever, brother. Especially in this new era. Right now, we are rebuilding. It's change, right? We wanna see America prosper. And I really appreciate you bringing the heat. And Chuck, tell me something. What is one of the misconceptions about ethics you see in business today?
That's it. That's a very broad question. One of the biggest misconceptions is if I choose to do something, and we're just going to call it unethical or maybe wrong, could be illegal, if there is no consequence, there won't be. And Carlos, you said something a minute ago, and I want to play off that for just a second because it really illustrates to your question. When I was a kid, and I'm 16. Let's just play this out. That's a long time ago, right? But when I was 16, would I like to have seen my girlfriend less than fully clothed? Of freaking course, right? Now, I might have said to her, baby, if you love me, you'll show me. And she would have slapped me. Or I'm just going to tell you, I would have got the crap beat out of me. But let's just, for hypothetical purposes, say she did. And let's say I wanted to remember it. The only way to do that would have been to take a picture. And in my day, pictures had film, and you took it to the drugstore and they developed the film and they gave it back to you. And the drugstore dude looked at the pictures, right? So here he sees a picture of this young lady's exposed chest in my hypothetical example. What would he have done? He'd have called mama. Now, mama would beat the crap out of me. Then when daddy came home, she'd say, your son has got a picture of his girlfriend's exposed chest, and he'd start with the belt. Of course, he'd want to see the picture first, but that's a different issue.
Anybody here that been through the belt or the chunkless, type in below. Type in what will you hit with belt. Oh because I want to hear it.
Yeah. So, but now think about that, because that was in my generation, or maybe yours to some extent, but it's today. So today, you get that young 16-year-old who's talking, not dating, but talking to the 13-year-old who looks like she's 18. And he says to her, he says, girl, if you love me, you'll show me. And she's like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, he says, sure. You can send it to me on Snapchat or whatever the app happens to be. Because we all know the whole concept initially behind Snapchat was I could send you something and you'd look at it and laugh and think it was funny and it would disappear. But freaking nothing disappears. So she says, okay, takes the picture. He gets it. He screenshots it before it disappears. So it may be gone from Snapchat, but it's on his mobile device. Now he's 16. He's going to show it to other people. And one of those people is going to have a conscience. and they're going to tell the school resource officer, who's going to tell the local police, and they're going to find a 13-year-old girl's exposed chest on his phone. And Carlos, it ain't a whipping. That ain't going to happen. It is now he has child porn on his phone and will be labeled a child sexual predator for the rest of his freaking life. So the world we live in now is the consequences are quicker and they're more significant. And I mean, it will bust your butt. So I can go back and think about what would have happened to me. Now, I'd have got a whipping. I'd have been pulled from school, and I'd had to go to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and visitation on Thursday, because I would have been marching to the tune of that Bible, because that's what my parents would have done. But today, I'd be a child sexual predator, and that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. That, in today's world, we really need to think about is the significance of the consequences when they happen, and they will happen.
Yeah, no, it's something that I often, I teach my daughter and many kids that I mentor. You gotta question everything and trust nobody.
Yes.
Whether I'm preaching to children or even when I'm preaching in finance, I tell people trust no one. You are your best fiduciary. Period.
Yes.
It's like you have to. You cannot. You never know who you're talking to. I tell those kids out there on the Roblox, on TikTok, you don't know who's on the other side on that thing. If that person is really another kid, it could be an adult at his basement. You know what I mean? So I tell people like it's so true, man. Such an interesting topic. And how do you connect the dots between choices, behavior, and success for your audiences?
So mid-'80s, I did stupid stuff. Mid-'90s, I go to prison. I get out of prison. Now think about it. I'm never going to be a CPA again. I violated those rules, right? The ethics rules, my license is taken. It'll never be given back. I got to figure out what to do. So I started, you said you did door to door. I started selling cemetery property door to door. Only job I could get. By the way, Mom always said death and taxes. I totally screwed up taxes, so I figured I'd try death. Just saying. Plus, everybody breathing is a potential customer, and I figured that's good. There's a lot of customers out there. Anyway, I knew that I better be the best at what I did, because as a convicted felon, people are not just going to jump up and want to give me jobs. So I became their number one salesperson. They asked me, could you teach other people? They're willing to do the work. I can teach them. So they made me a manager, and that became a top performing location. And then they said, well, could you take on 13 locations? And I said, yes. And then eventually it became 40. And a decade later, mid 2000s, I'm a senior VP in a public company. Wow. Now, it happened because I took the first job and I did it really doggone well. I don't care what the job is, but I did it so well, they could not help but promote me and allow me to continue to do that. Now, by 2006, something becomes clear. In the mid-'80s, I made dumb choices. Prison. Mid-'90s to early 2000s, I made better choices. VP as a convicted felon. That's when I began talking, because I had credibility in the marketplace to say every choice has a consequence. If you make dumb choices, you get prison. If you make better choices, you can be a senior VP in a public company, even though I am a convicted felon. So you got to have a level of credibility to be able to help people understand what can take place.
Yes. No, man. Amen, brother. Amen. It's so true, man. That's why you guys know me. I'm a huge proponent. I don't care how, as long as you haven't hurt children or abused women or seniors, you're good with me. Everybody deserves a second chance. Build yourself up, learn how to communicate, get on more stages, and, you build credibility, authority, and keep sharing your story and never quit. As you were talking about selling door-to-door cemetery, I remember selling door-to-door, being asked that question, train others. And I went on for 20 years training and doing sales training, companies like Comcast, AT&T Broadband, helped Comcast generate over $1 billion in revenue for them. But again, they start with going on that project at night in Boston, Jamaica plan, knocking door to door. It was cold. It was crazy. I'm a big boy, 6'5", 300 pounds. back then I was lighter, so I look like a cop, like a fed. So they will patch me. They will think, let me see if you have any wires, guns pulled on me. So many stories that I shared on my book, and then I shared on the podcast. But it's so true, man. It's so true, my friend. And AI, I've been talking a lot about AI lately, Chuck. And, lately, some major announcements, right, with the White House, the Stargate, they bring in 500 billion. This is incredible for our economy. But let's go deep on that. Let's go about diving deep on the top of the ethics of AI. How do we ensure that decision machines make align with human values?
You can't determine if it's going to align with your values if you don't know what your values are. So first, as a human, you need to decide what's significant and important to me. Secondly, the truth is AI, the genie's out of the bottle. That ain't going back in. To me, this is like the time when the automobile first appeared on the scene, but everybody could saddle and bridle a horse and they knew how to ride the doggone thing.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, I couldn't saddle and bridle a horse if I had to, and everybody drives a car.
Yeah. They're not going to go from New York to Boston on their horse on that cold in December. Hell no.
No, AI is here. The question to me becomes, one, I need to be willing to experiment with it. I need to be willing to go into Perplexity or ChatGPT or Runway ML or 11 Labs or whatever it happens to be. But I need to understand what's the program. I use that term loosely. That's probably an old guy term. But what's the program? What does it do? And what can I do that is going to bring value out into the world? Now, let me just, two things as a side note. A car is a great tool. It's wonderful. It gets you point A to point B. Unless there happens to be a demonstration and somebody decides they're going to drive their car through the demonstrators and kill people, much like happened in New Orleans not long ago. Then the car is an instrument of death. The question is AI good or bad is a function of in whose hands is it being used, and are you willing to learn enough about it to know I'm comfortable with what I'm using, what I'm doing? Is it done for right purposes? And am I smart enough to see a video and say, you know what? That ain't real. Like there's a video, I just saw it. I literally just saw it today. It was entertaining, but it was Barron Trump singing something like Amazing Grace or something other. And I looked at it and I was like, son of a gun, that is a really good deep fake. It was quite amazing. But I recognized it ain't Barron Trump singing Amazing Grace and some produced video. So I can understand it for what it is, but I can also have enough intelligence to discern what is real versus what is not.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, man, they can literally take exactly what you and I are discussing here, and they can duplicate this and act like you and I talking some crazy subject. They could twist our talks, and it's crazy how, and even like some of the stuff in the advancements in AI is so fast nowadays. It used to be, years. Now it's like 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, for example, OpenAI, right? They just announced AI agents where now you can give your passwords to AI agents through OpenAI, where they can go on your computer and do your tasks on all your accounts and all your businesses. But now the question becomes, who here is willing to give all your passwords to an AI agent to go on and do every tedious task that you guys do? So it's so many conversations that we're going to be having these conversations more often, guys. I'm going to be bringing more AI people. And this is incredible how, and I'm tying over here to ethics because it's such a powerful thing. How far are we willing to really go with this shit, right? As far as like, I'm not ready to give my password yet. Hell no. I don't know about you guys. You guys listening to us right now, whether you are live on the replay, I don't go anywhere, YouTube, on Facebook, on X, or on LinkedIn, type in below. Would you guys give your password to an AI agent to log in on all your social medias, your banks, your companies, and go do your tasks? It's something that you're going to have to become really, really good at prompting and instilling your values and your beliefs and every single thing about you inside the AI machine. But you also have to be careful, because are you willing to handle your IP, your intellectual property, to an AI? Because a lot of those AIs out there, they are free, or the ones, even the ones that you pay 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks a month. Guess what? They can take that info and run with it. Unless, you know what I mean? So it's so many things in there, but what is your take on that, Chuck?
Well, Carlos, one of the things, and I just want to throw this out just because I know you're on stages and you talk with a lot of people that are. So I want to give you a really practical example of AI. I have cloned my voice. Okay. Yep. There's an AI called 11 Labs. Right. And so I went in and I read several chapters of my book, and I did it 4 or 5 times, and it's cloned my voice, and it's really good.
I highly recommend, guys. Anybody here that haven't used it, I highly recommend. Not an endorsement or anything, but I use it. Chuck use it. It's awesome. Yeah. Check it out. 11 Labs. I should make you guys a sponsor of the show, but
yeah, that'd be a good idea. But the reason the reason I wanted to mention that is not a plug for 11 Labs, but I just finished writing a book. Now, normally I would sit down with the mic and read the book, and it would take 8, 9 hours, 10 hours, whatever it happens to be. And I'm going to promise you something. By the time I get to the end, I am not going to be on. I'm going to sound like I'm from the South, and there's no consonants in my words. And so I'm just going to get tired.
Yeah.
I can take the book, just put the Word document of the book in 11 Labs, and guess what? It will read it perfectly. It will always pronounce the consonants. It has my inflection. It will create the audio book in such a short period of time versus me having to read it. That's the value of it. But the bad side is I could also take any podcast that's out there or any YouTube video, isolate the audio, put it into 11 Labs, and replicate the voice. So you have to be aware of the value that you can create, and also be aware of understanding that bad actors can also use it for bad purposes.
Yeah, look what they did to Joe Rogan, right? They duplicated the show. You know, Joe is one of the Joe is when it comes to podcasts, that's the guy to go after right there. Yep. It's him, people like him and Tucker Carlson. They get millions of episodes per show. We'll get there in God's name, amen. Like my good friend Don Green from Napoleon Hill Foundation, the president, he always say that every single day. You know, let's go, Don Green. I surprised somebody yesterday on the show, and we were trying to bring Don Green on air live in the middle of the show. I never done that before. And her dream. She's a very successful author from Australia. Check it out, the latest episode, Carlos Inspire Show.com. You know, every Monday, new episodes at 5:07 a.m. And then we release the videos every Monday at 12 noon. But I literally, called. He couldn't get on the show. There was storms. So I called him. He answered. We put him on speaker. And now we're fulfilling her wish to ask him a question. And when enough is enough. And we start talking about contentment. And now today we're talking about ethics and AI. It's such an interesting subject, but we're going to have to talk more about this. But Chuck, I have a lot of CEOs of companies and founders, people that have people like yourself, like myself, come in on their companies and talk on stages. And how do you help businesses integrate ethical frameworks into company culture? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it will serve a lot of our leaders here.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there are 2 significant parts to that. One is, if your company, and I say if, because there's some that probably don't, but if your company really believes in ethical behavior, you need to understand on a human perspective, from a human perspective, what would cause a functionally honest person to do something dishonest, unethical. Because one of the things that I teach companies is what the trigger points are, what to look for, okay? And I say this with all the respect in the world to my former partners when I was tax partner in a CPA firm. If they had known what to look for, they would have seen pretty quickly something was weird in my life. And had they mentioned that, Chuck, it looks to me like you've traded cars every 6 months for the past year. Every time you do that, you lose money. Where's that coming from? Because we know what each other made, and nobody died, so we didn't have an inheritance. If they had asked that question, that would have been one of those, holy crap, somebody's on to me. I better get off this merry-go-round and fix shit quick. Pardon the language. But if you don't know what to look for, what ends up happening is people within the company can get lulled into a sense of security, take that first step on a black diamond slope. The next thing you know, man, they're on the slippery slope and you can't stop them. So if you can identify it, you can interrupt it. And if you can interrupt it, that means the culture that says we believe in ethical action, if we suspect something is unethical, gets interrupted, which means we're helping keep people on the straight and narrow. Let me give you a quick, simple example. There used to be a movie, Minority Report. Yep. Tom Cruise. In Minority Report, there were the precogs. These were these three ladies that could see things in advance, and they would predict, a crime before it happened to prevent it from happening.
Great movie, by the way.
Yeah, it was good. I really liked it. Now, I know some people are going to freak at this, but think about if I'm working for a company and they provide me a computer, they provide me a phone, I'm working, I'm in email, I'm on social media, I'm making calls, there's texts that are being made. I know people would freak, but think about the data that's there. And what if there was a way to identify in that data, something's happening in that person's life. It doesn't mean anything is wrong or they're bad, but they could be tempted. And if I know somebody could be tempted, as a human being, doesn't it serve society and the organization to say, hey, Chuck, I know your wife was just diagnosed with X, and disease or health is a tempting factor, one of the primary three. So if that's the case, then get a little bit of love from the company and some compassion, but also some understanding that that could be a tempting factor for me. Let's make sure I don't do something that I would regret later.
Wow. Such a great point, man. An incredible answer, by the way. I love it. And Chuck, your journey, it's a proof that people deserve second chances. As you guys know me, everybody deserves a second chance, in my opinion, as long as you don't harm kids or women or seniors. That's my standard. That's the Marine Carlos right there, the young Carlos. But how can companies foster culture or cultures where failure isn't the end, but a stepping stone? Because a lot of people come to me, they try so many different things, they are failing, they cannot keep up with the pressure from the board of advisors, the stock's going down, they want more and more. Whenever they come to me, they were doing maybe 90, 100% of quota, but they want to do 150, 100, 200% of quota. I help them get to 150, 200%, and now they want 300 and 400. You know how that goes, Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
In what is your take, and how can companies foster cultures where failure isn't the end, but a stepping stone in changing the game?
So, Carlos, again, I'm going to go back to two separate things. One is, to your point, just the simple recognition that the only way to find true success is through failure. Nobody, not any company out there, starts with an idea and hits it just like that without any obstacles. There are always obstacles. So if in the company I'm willing to recognize that failed, the question becomes, what did you learn from it? Because if I'm going to talk with somebody and they screwed up or it failed, whatever happened, what did you learn? Now, if they didn't learn anything, we've got a problem. But if they learn something from it, then they're not likely going to do that a second time. Now, I'm going to hit you with a different perspective also. If I'm an employee in a company, and let's say that my responsibility is $1 million a year in sales, and next year the company says that needs to be $1,200,000, and I'm like, okay, give him my best shot, and I get to $1,205,000, and the next year they said it's going to be $1,004,000. But if the market never changed, if the physical territory is the same, if that territory is not growing, and let's be candid, there are some places where there is no growth, right? If an accountant, I don't say this disrespectfully, but if the accountant says we have to have more, we have to have more, we have to have more, that's not encouraging success, because what you're saying to someone is the number is more important than the reality of what is capable to be done, the true capacity of it. It's like saying I've got a car that's capable of doing 140 miles an hour, and just because I did 145, somebody thinks it should do 160. It's only going to do what it's going to do. So there is a point for some people where you sit back and you look and you say, I am successful, I am good. If there are unreasonable expectations, I might need to think about either becoming my own entrepreneur and going out and creating my own company, or finding a company that values what I truly do bring to the table. And I'm a VP in a public company today, and I will tell you, they value what we bring to the table, but they do not look for unreasonable expectations, because not everything is always going to grow at 10 or 15% per year forever, including Apple.
Yep. That's real talk. That's real talk. Every company that reach a peak, that's why they call it a peak. When it goes up, must you come down. We had many scenarios in history. Wow, man, what a great show, Chuck. We are almost at the top of the hour. Before I ask you the final question of the show, what is the best place that you hang out, where they can follow up with you, Chuck, whether social media accounts, your website? What is the best place for them to reach out to you and keep up with all your awesomeness?
Okay, well, I'm going to put it to you real simply. Because I deal with ethics, and in many cases things are confidential, I am happy to be active on social media, on YouTube and LinkedIn. You can find me there. But more times than not, people use email, because that way they can be transparent in telling me the problem, and it doesn't appear on some feed somewhere for everyone else to see. And that email is easy. It is chuck@chuckgallagher.com. I'm not a smart man. It's very simple.
I love it. I love it how like you keep it at 100. Chuck@chuckgallagher.com. Right there, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. And my friend Chuck, the question that I ask every incredible guest that's been on the show, many influencers, experts like you, celebrities, athletes. We had some really great people on the show. Grateful to God, the friendships and the relationships that was built because of this show. And that's why I'm a big proponent of people doing video once a day, doing interview. And because it's something that when you and I are no longer here, people can listen. They can.
That's true.
You know what I mean? It's a legacy that we live.
Yeah.
And this question is actually tied to legacy. Is your eulogy is 50 years from now, you're 100 years old, and your best friends are going to be there. They're going to be reading it. And they're going to say, Chuck Gallagher was ... In your own words, my friend, who was Chuck Gallagher?
Wow. I would say Chuck Gallagher was a person that eventually connected with his God-given gifts and focused his attention on living in those gifts, as opposed to trying to force something else to take place in life. We all are given God-given gifts. The question is, if we live in those gifts, we will be blessed.
Man, my brother Chuck, that's what I'm talking about, guys. Chuck Gallagher in the house, and it's about to go down. Chuck is a living proof that your past doesn't define your future. Your choices do. No matter how far you're falling, the path to redemption starts with one ethical decision at a time. Remember, my friends, the power to rebuild is always in your hands. A mistake will never define you. How you respond, it does. Thank you for being here, Chuck. Thank you, my followers. I love you guys. Every Monday, 5:07 a.m. Pacific time, CarlosInspireShow.com. I love you all. Have a blessed day. Text somebody here who needs to hear this today. Much love.